All right, today we are opening up the playbook on persuasion. We're going to break down the science of how people influence your decisions, and maybe more importantly, how you can start to recognize these plays and, well, stand your ground.
You ever wonder that? How some people, from master negotiators to those really charismatic performers, just seem to have this knack for getting you to say yes? Well, I'm here to tell you, it is not magic. It's actually a set of psychological tools and techniques that once you see them, you're going to start noticing absolutely everywhere. Okay, let's dive in.
So, first up, we're going to look at the science of persuasion. These are the foundational, scientifically backed principles, the core tools that get used for, well, pretty much everything from massive marketing campaigns to just our simple, everyday interactions.
And this quote right here from the pioneering researcher Robert Cialdini is really the key to the whole thing. See, so much of influence happens just below the surface of our conscious mind. We often can't even explain why we made a certain choice, but the science can, and that's exactly what we're going to decode today.
First on our list is reciprocity. This is a social rule that is just deeply wired into us. If someone gives you something, even something really small, you feel this almost automatic nagging urge to give something back. The crucial part, though, is that the persuader has to make that first move. They have to go first.
And check this out. It shows just how powerful a tiny gesture can be. So in one study, researchers sent out a bunch of surveys. With no note at all, only about 34% of people responded. Fine. Add a blank sticky note, and okay, it jumps up to 43%. But, and this is the amazing part, add a small handwritten sticky note with a personal request, the response rate shoots up to 69%. It more than doubles. That is reciprocity in action. A small, personalized gift creates a surprisingly powerful sense of obligation.
Okay, let's move on to our next principle, social proof. This is basically the idea that we are all just heavily influenced by what other people are doing. Whenever we're not sure how to act, what do? We look around for clues, and the behavior of the crowd kind of becomes our default guide. We're social animals, right? It's what we do.
And this study illustrates the point perfectly. A hotel wanted its guests to reuse their towels, so they tried a few things. Appealing to environmental reasons got a 38% success rate. Not bad. Saying the hotel would donate if guests reuse their towels got it up to 46%. But the most effective message of all, at 48%, was simply telling guests that the majority of other guests who stayed in that very room reused their towels. Just knowing what their peers did was more persuasive than any other reason. And our third principle is scarcity. This one taps right into our fear of missing out, our FOMO. When something is limited, whether it's time or quantity or just access, we instantly want it more. We're just wired to be way more motivated by the thought of losing something than we are by the thought of gaining something of the exact same value.
I mean, the classic example of this is the whole new Coke disaster back in the 80s. Get this, blind taste tests showed that people actually preferred the new formula. But when Coca-Cola announced they were getting rid of the original for good, what happened? The old Coke suddenly became scarce. It was the thing people couldn't have, and because of that, it was all anyone wanted. The outcry was so huge they had to bring it back. That's the power of scarcity.
Okay, so these principles we've talked about, they aren't inherently good or bad, right? They're just tools. But that brings up a really critical question. At what point does influencing someone become, well, controlling them? When does persuasion cross that line and become manipulation?
And this isn't just some casual question, It's a serious field of study. There's this constant tension between rationally convincing someone of something and using tactics that kind of bypass their freedom to choose. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at some of those darker tactics.
Now we're getting into the plays that are often used by performers like stage psychics and mentalists. These are techniques specifically designed to make you believe they know things about you that they just couldn't possibly know.
The master technique is something called cold reading. And let me be clear, it has absolutely nothing to do with psychic powers. Nope. It's all about being incredibly observant and using a series of psychological tricks to get the other person to unknowingly give up all the information themselves. The psychic just cleverly packages it and sells it right back to them. So here are a few of the core techniques. First, you've got something called shotgunning. This is where the reader just throws out a ton of very general statements to a big crowd, like, I'm sensing a connection to the name Michael or Michelle, and then just waits for someone to connect to it. Then you have Barnum statements, which are these cleverly vague claims that seem really personal, but actually apply to almost everybody. And finally, there's the rainbow ruse, a statement that can't possibly be wrong because it credits you with two opposite traits at the same time.
So here's a perfect Barnum statement. Think about it for a second. You have a box of old, unsorted photographs in your house. Does that apply to you? For a huge number of people, the answer is a definite yes. It feels really specific, kind of personal, but it's just an incredibly high probability guess.
And this one is a classic rainbow ruse. See how it covers all the bases? It says you're a kind person, but also that you can get really angry. Well, of course you can. That applies to basically everyone on the planet, but hearing it from a psychic makes them seem so insightful, like they understand your complex, contradictory nature. It's a trick.
So let's move from the stage and into real life. Because when these persuasive techniques are used to control and harm people, especially in relationships, well, that's when they become what we call the dark arts of emotional manipulation.
A really common and pretty toxic pattern is captured by this acronym, DARVO. It's a predictable three-step dance a manipulator uses to dodge any responsibility when they're called out on their behavior. First, they deny they did anything wrong. Then, they attack your credibility for even bringing it up. And finally, they flip the script completely, reversing the roles of victim and offender so that they're the victim and you're the bad guy.
And here's what that looks like in the real world. Imagine you say to someone, "You hurt my feelings." A healthy, normal response is one of empathy, right? Curiosity. "I'm sorry, tell me what I did." But a DARVO response immediately denies your feeling, attacks you for having it, "You're too sensitive," and then reverses the roles. "Now you're being mean to me." It's a strategy designed to shut you down and make you feel guilty for even speaking up in the first place.
So now that we can spot these plays, how do we defend against them? This last section is all about empowerment. It's about giving you the tools you need to stand your ground when you're facing manipulation.
Okay, so the most crucial thing to remember is this. You have options. First, and maybe most importantly, trust your own gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Try to counter their denial with specific, concrete evidence. When they attack you personally, just redirect the conversation back to the actual issue. Firmly refuse to accept that role of the bad guy that they're trying to force on you. And, this is a big one, set firm boundaries. It is always okay to end a conversation if you feel like you're being manipulated.
Ultimately, what this all comes down to is awareness. Research shows that people who just know about these kinds of tactics are way less likely to fall for them. Recognizing the pattern is the key. It's what lets you see the game for what it is and gives you the power to choose not to play. In this case, knowledge really is your best defense. And that brings us to the end of our playbook. We've looked at the science, the dark arts, and the defense. So I'm just going to leave you with this one question to think about. Now that you know the plays, from advertising and the media to maybe even your own personal relationships, where do you see the game being played?